Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland, and this is a video about the North Korea situation. Well, just last week, the leader of the People's Democratic Republic of Korea went to Vladivostok, Russia. And it was there in the Russian Far East that Chairman Kim Jong he met President Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, and they discussed the situation. So the United States has ratcheted up sanctions on North Korea, and clearly they are biting. So that's why North Korea is attempting to demonstrate that she is not friendless. North Korea has frontiers with only three other states, those being South Korea, China, and Russia. About 90% of North Korea's foreign trade is with China. About 5% of it is with Russia, and the remaining 5% is with other countries. So these sanctions are to try and get North Korea to completely denuclearize. And only a month ago, Kim Jong-un had a summit in Hanoi with President Trump. No headway was made. North Korea has not demonstrated sufficient progress on denuclearization, and therefore Trump refused to ease the sanctions. Because remember Trump's démarche last June in Singapore, when he said that there was complete denuclearization, the situation has greatly improved and all the rest of it, with no timetable set for denuclearization, with no criteria to establish that, with no inspections put in place or anything like that. So there was no way of proving that the North Koreans were doing what they said they were doing. But Trump was not gushing over him quite so much this time, someone he fell in love with. You'd think he must trust him if you fall in love with someone. So this is an attempt by North Korea to show that they do have possible allies, that they can have trade and possibly persuade Russia to ease sanctions on them. So there were up to 40,000 North Korean guest workers in Russia 2 years ago. In accordance with the United Nations sanctions, most of them have been repatriated. 8,000 remain in Russia. They're all supposed to be sent home to North Korea by the end of the year. So North Korea's got a very low GDP. And of course, about 250,000 people died of starvation there in the 90s. So Pyongyang is an island of privilege in a country where people live in dire penury because so much money is splurged on armaments. Anyhow, so these people here are working at below minimum wage, these North Korean laborers. And obviously some of the money goes to the government in Pyongyang. But they still consider themselves lucky to be allowed to work in the Russian Federation. So North Korea exports only that, workers and coal. Now Russia has got tons of coal and other sources of energy, hydrocarbons. So that's not working for them. Some coal's been exported to Russia and then re-exported by Russia. But so really North Korea is bringing nothing to the party. There were these anodyne expressions of goodwill. But Russia's been generous to North Korea in the past. Remember, obviously North Korea was a communist state and was closely aligned with the Soviet Union. North Korea was deeply in debt to Russia, and its debts were forgiven by Russia a few years ago. President Putin twice invited Kim Jong-un to Russia, and twice Kim Jong-un declined. So that was a rather discourteous of him. Anyway, so Russia doesn't want to do too much to help North Korea because, it'd be expensive to them. And the Chinese really want the North Koreans to denuclearize for various reasons. The more countries have nuclear weapons, the less of a big deal it is to have them. North Korea is an excuse for the United States to have troops in South Korea. If North Korea denuclearizes, if the two Koreas unite on a friendly basis, something like that, the Americans might leave. The Chinese might demand they leave, other things like that. If there is a nuclear exchange, that will affect China, which is adjacent to North Korea. If North Korea becomes a failed state, millions of North Koreans will flood into Manchuria. Now, the Russians don't want a nuclear exchange more than anybody else does. Of course they don't. That'd be crazy. And so it would impact the Russian Far East too. It wouldn't hurt Russia as much as it would China, because not very many Russians live in the Far East. And yeah, a failed state on Russia's eastern border would not be good news for the Russian Federation either, and they don't want to have lots of North Korean refugees coming into their country. So Moscow's not being too helpful to Pyongyang because that would irk Cathay, as well as annoy Washington. But it's demonstrating to the world that Russia's a serious player, obviously, and is an interested party in this whole issue. Because who's there? There's North Korea, the South Korea, the United States, and China. Russia should possibly be involved in the negotiations, maybe even Japan. And obviously Japan is the bugbear for North Korea, saying, oh, they invaded us, they occupied us. Yes, that's true, quite a long time ago. The entire Japanese period in Korean history is shorter than the partition of Korea has been, which has been going on since 1945. So there are national projects that Russia's engaged in, and these commenced in May last year, just after the president was re-elected. He announced this series of projects to upgrade infrastructure all over the country. Now, these are highly ambitious and seem to be too expensive, so they're being scaled back already. But one way to do it is to get cheap labour from North Korea. And it's not just a question of cost. Sometimes it's difficult to get workers to go to remote regions of Siberia. These areas are being depopulated because there are very few economic opportunities and people are moving out. And Russia relies heavily on guest workers from other erstwhile Soviet states, such as Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Armenia, and so forth. But they're not going to come so much anymore. Some of them are going to China instead, which is sometimes well paid, or to Middle Eastern countries like the UAE. So North Korea represents a large reservoir of cheap labour. Anyway, so Moscow can demonstrate to Washington that the Russia can make the Korean situation better or worse for the United States, depending on American behaviour. If Americans make concessions on other issues, like Syria, then Russia could be more cooperative on the Korean issue. If Russia is annoyed by America, conversely, then obviously Russia could be more helpful to North Korea, stiffen their will to resist, to trade with them more, so that the pressure of sanctions is reduced on North Korea. So that's the situation, that's what's happening. And then just this week, just yesterday rather, North Korea tested more missiles. So they're demonstrating to Uncle Sam that if you don't play ball with us, we could get nasty. Okay, we tried being nice, we tried cooperating, and you didn't cut us any slack. So we can up the ante. So we've seen the détente, and now may yet be a rise in tensions, brinksmanship. Nobody wants that. People are afraid if there's a nuclear exchange, there probably won't be, but just if, that small chance, it's so horrific, we don't want to take that chance. And the North Koreans have tried this strategy many times in the past, throwing the toys out of the pram, the West backs down, gives them some food aid. So what? Okay, maybe we're being limp-wristed, but we should be firm with them, some people say. But honestly, a few $1 million worth of food aid, which is worse paying that or millions of people getting killed in a nuclear exchange? I know, clearly, the latter is worse. So it's really about avoiding the worst. That's what a sagacious foreign policy is about. But President Trump is so erratic, there's really no telling what he would do next. He seems to lack impulse control. That's why he's there tweeting with his absolutely gigantic hands. I'm just worried that his mood swings would cause him to do something very rash. He might pivot to the other extreme. So you see how Moscow's been very responsible on this and calling for restraint and trying to resolve the situation, whereas about a year and a half ago, there was all this puerile, bloodthirsty rhetoric from Trump about little rocket man, and I've got a bigger button than you've got, and things like that, and I'll respond with fire and fury, almost as they wanted a nuclear war. Fortunately, Trump seems to have matured since then, but he may well relapse. So watch this space. I don't think the North Koreans are ever going to completely denuclearize. They see it as their trump card. We wouldn't even be talking about them if they didn't have nuclear weapons. They'd be a poverty-stricken country with really nothing to offer the world, just completely unimportant. Obviously, the nice idea would be if they reunited with South Korea and were free and prosperous and peaceful and everyone was happy. But somehow I don't see that happening.